is provided with three different views for the system administrator, the end user, the sensor provider. And I provide a very different view based on the role of the user. For example, for the end user, they can only view the virtual sensor that they subscribe, but for the sensor provider, he can see on the physical sensor and also the mobile device that they provide to the cloud. Finally, for the administrator, he has the full view of the status of the whole system, including the physical sensor and the virtual sensor, and also the subscription ratio between the physical sensor and the virtual sensor. By default, the ratio should be 1 to 3, and if it's higher than 1 to 3, so it could be oversubscribed, and the system will send a warning to the administrator. The monitoring component received input from the virtualization component, the resource manager, and then it provides the metering data for the building component in terms of data uses or user uses on the sensor. The monitoring component is deployed as a web service. So for the purpose of this demo, I built a GUI, a web application GUI, to connect to make call to the monitoring service in the form of RESTful API and display that on the web UI. This is a sequence diagram of how the function is called. So for the user, the end user, for example, like the sensor vendor, after they are successfully authenticated, they will be they can access the monitoring page, and in the monitoring page, it will send the health check request to the the monitoring component. On the monitoring dashboard, it will send several requests, like the get sensor status or get virtual sensor status, and also later when we have data, it also make call to get the data on the uses. But for the purpose of this demo, we don't have the data yet. So this information like the sensor status, the virtual sensor status, is sent back and displayed on the monitoring dashboard. And the monitoring dashboard can be scheduled to be refreshed at regular interval, but by default, it will refresh itself every 30 seconds. Okay, this is the class design, and it also a database design is a little bit small, but we can zoom in it. Some of the core table is described here. The sensor table stands for the physical sensor, and it contains the configurations information of the physical sensor and also its status like on and off. Sensor type describes the type of the sensor, like the temperature sensor, speed, carbon dioxide, clipper, to tracking the number of uh, of people coming to the bus or train, light rail. The sensor hub is like a logical unit, and it can control a group of mobile devices. It depends on the capacity of the server that back the sensor hub. So it's like, for example, like in Fremont, we have the sensor hub for Fremont that can contain up to 50, 100 VTI bus. And later, if we have more bus, more sensor, we can deploy more hub to contain new mobile device and sensor. The host table here, the host table stands for the mobile device, and each mobile device will carry with it some sensor. Virtual sensor is the logical sensor created by the virtualization component, and that abstract the physical sensor hardware specification. And each virtual sensor can be mapped to one physical sensor, and one physical sensor can be mapped to one or two or three virtual sensor. The user table contains the users or the system, and basically we have three roles: the administrator, provider, and end user. And each of them will have different privileges, and they can access different page. Transaction manager, this record or request from the user to provision virtual sensor, and the request can be success or fail. We also store the fail request or for the case that later when the system have available resource, it can serve that request, or the field request can be used to analyze the user behavior for load balancing component so that it can load balancing effectively. Billing contain the monthly billing for end user and payment history. The concept for the design, because this module monitoring component mostly deal with data, it aggregate data from different table, so a lot of techniques for query optimizing is applied. And because we work closely with data, manipulate data, so the design, the application structure, I mean the coding, is designed in function oriented, and that's more appropriate than the object oriented design. As I mentioned before, mostly the function is aggregation function to aggregate data, collect data from a different table. And what the core function is get statistic. This function will look at the role or the user who make the request, like administrator, end user, or provider, to filter the data. And it also provide all the information like the sensor status, physical virtual sensor status, the mobile device status, and also it calculates the subscription ratio between the virtual sensor and the physical sensor. In this demo, the default ratio is 1:4, and if the ratio is increased more than 1:4, it will send a warning. This API is described in the API design in 2.4.4. The running environment, this component, monitoring component, is deployed as a web service that uses RESTful API, and so it can work with the web UI and also the console application. They just need to make a REST API call to the service. This is the component API design. This is some API, like the get detail of the sensor, example of the response value, detail information of the virtual sensor, the device, and here the core function, get statistic. So it will aggregate all on the system data and provide the information in JSON format. It will provide the hub that contains the mobile device in terms of host ID here, provider, the route of the mobile device, the status, the virtual sensor, and the subscription ratio. There also status. Okay, I forget to document this. The status of the virtual sensor. Okay, this is a GUI design. So as the login screen, after the login, then the user will be redirected to different monitoring page. So we have the layout for the administrator, monitoring for administrator. So it's a grid that displays the status. The monitoring page for provider is a little bit more simple, and some information is hidden, like the information for the virtual sensor. So the provider don't need to know about the virtual sensor that the end user use. They just need to have some information like the subscription ratio to know how much their physical sensor is utilized. And finally is the layout design for the monitoring page of the end user. So it's quite simple. You just have the information on the virtual sensor, the rules, the type, the status. And on the route here, when it's a link, so when I click on the link, it will display the route that virtual sensor will be moving. And I'll click on the virtual sensor to see the detailed information of the virtual sensor. The navigation for the GUI is quite straightforward. So at the login step, when the user successfully log in, it will direct them to the home page. The home page is a dashboard and is customized to have 3 different views for the administrator, vendor, provider, sensor provider, and the end user. And then they can go access the monitoring page. It's in the it's like a frame. The left panel is always on the left, the main menu on the left, so we can access the monitoring page. So we have three different monitoring pages, but from the user perspective, they just see the monitoring page that the system provides to them. So if they administrator, they will see the monitoring page for administrator. If they the sensor provider, they can only see the monitoring page for the provider, and so on for the end user. From the monitoring page, the user can go to detail of the physical sensor, virtual sensor, sensor provider detail, mobile device detail, and the detail on the route. Okay, now for the component demo. At first, we try to log in as a end user. Okay, so this is a dashboard that displays some information as a map, but that is not our purpose. Our focus is here on the sensor monitoring page. As you can see, the monitoring page display on the virtual sensor that this user subscribed. The route here is a link. When we click on it, it will display the route that the sensor move on the map here. Here, this is how the sensor move, and the data it provides could be along this route. Okay, now try with different user. Okay, for user 2. For user 2, okay, see, he will just see 3 sensors that he applied, and one of them is off. This might be because the connection to the mobile device lost, or the provider shut down that sensor. Now we try to log in as a sensor provider. Okay, in the dashboard, it will show location of the mobile device and the number of the sensor that this provider provide to the cloud. Now we go to the monitoring page. Okay, it will display the sensor, the bus, the route. As we click on it, it will display the route of the mobile device, the state of the physical sensor, subscription ratio, like because this is off, so no virtual sensor, mobile device, bus 1, bus 2, bus 3. Okay, now we try another vendor. Okay, so this vendor just have a few sensor. Oh, he just have one sensor and one mobile device, and the ratio is 1:1. Now we try to log in as an administrator. Okay, like I said, the administrator will have a full view on the data of the system, like you see on the mobile device, on the sensor. Now look at the monitoring page. As you can see, it's a table that's maybe a little bit the same table, but the data, monitoring data is different. The main difference is that he can see on the vendor, on the system vendor, provider, and the subscription ratio between the physical sensor and the virtual sensor. For example, here for sensor Clipper sensor 1, it have one virtual sensor, so the ratio is 1:1. But for location sensor, for example, it's the off and the subscription ratio now is 1:0. So here we have some sensor here is the on, but no virtual sensor. It means no end user subscribe for it yet. So this sensor is under subscribed. So the administrator better find somehow to advertising for this sensor, or he can click on the reel and see that the sensor on this reel don't attract customer. So you need to find some strategy for that. And that's the end of my demo. Thank you for watching.